You are listening to an American Free Press podcast.
Joining me on the line is Bart Van Ness from Maryland. Bart, thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be with you, Dave.
Bart, we spoke in detail about your views about the handling of the coverage by American Free Press of Sandy Hook shootings and other things, and I want to get to that in great detail in a moment. But before we do, for the benefit of the listeners, can you give them a little bit of background about who you are?
Yeah, I was born in Maryland, born in Baltimore, and I grew up on the Eastern Shore, and I lived on the Eastern Shore for, since about 1968, and I've been retired now for 16 years, and I've been involved in the patriot movement for, I would say, since about 1968, about 45 years. And I was first originally with the John Birch Society for 7 or 8 years, and I got involved with Support Your Local Police Committee, and when I did, I came across some illegal Ku Klux Klan and National States' Rights Party and Minutemen activity, and I went to the state police, and make a long story short, I worked with the intelligence unit of the Maryland State Police for, I would say 7 or 8 years as a concerned citizen in a non-pay status, and I learned a lot about what was going on. I had a lot of friends. Of course, I had the Support Your Local Police Committee was an ad hoc committee of the John Birch Society at that time. I've been very deeply involved in the patriot movement.
This issue that I mentioned before about Sandy Hook and the coverage provided by American Free Press, I guess when AFP reported on it, what they said wasn't exactly the way you would have said it. Is that right?
Absolutely correct.
Why is that?
Let me divest from this for a minute, if I can, Dave. I want to go back a little bit to a false flag operation, and then I will get into the sources that I have. As we know, by definition, a false flag operation is one used by perpetrators for major political purposes, to launch or justify war, stage a coup, destabilize a society, subvert a popular movement, or cause a major change in policy. Most false flag operations enable the deceitful rulers to order them to accomplish several aims. Now, examples of this are Operation Northwoods, and that was stopped by President Kennedy. He fired the people who tried to do it. Tonkin Gulf, the Liberty, of course, 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, Oklahoma City, and the mass shootings that have taken place across the country. And I want to say this, Dave. January 11th of 2013, I had an interview with Victor Thorne, who you know, I'm sure, for his book, Sandy Hook, A Critical Analysis. And I want to spell this out so people can pick this up if they want. It's called Sisyphus Press, P.O. Box 10495, State College, Pennsylvania, and it's zip 160805. And I think it's important people get this and read it. I stated on page 6 of that book, the reason I'm suspicious of Sandy Hook is because the government and media have lied to us about so many events in the past that I think we need a thorough and honest investigation, which has not been forthcoming. Even to this day, it has not. Now, bear this in mind, Dave. It is known that Barack Obama and Cass Sunstein, I'm sure who you know who he is.
I do.
Yeah, he's the disinformation specialist.
Exactly.
And he wants conspiracy theories, and when they say conspiracy theories, I put that in italics, shut down, and much of this disinformation has been published by the major media, which you know. And it's going on right today, even with this thing that's going on in Washington. Dave, I want to make it perfectly clear. I am not anti-government, but I am anti-bad government, and I don't trust our present government or media at all. Victor Thorne made a very salient point in his book on Sandy Hook. He said, Sandy Hook may very well be the most important event since 9/11, and now it very well may be tied in with the Washington Navy Yard shootings, which happened very recently, and I'll explain this to you. What I want to do, I want to show exactly what is behind the mass shootings since Columbine and to the present. And you know we've had all these mass shootings across the country. Columbine was about, 1993?
For some reason, I'm thinking 95, but you could be right. Let me check while you're talking.
In connection with this, there are 2 government programs that have been brought out. It's Operation Open Eyes and PsyOps. And these are explained in detail by Jack McLean. And Jack is a very good friend of mine. He's a retired Phoenix Police Department officer. One of his copies was Aid and Abet, and this was pages 10 to 15, 3 to 5, issue 42.1, spring 2007. And I'm bringing this out purposely so that people can, if they hear this, they can maybe request this. And this is Police Against the New World Order. And it's available from 115 Patrick Henry Court, Tamiami, Idaho, 83536. and his phone number is 208-935-7852. And Jack, as I say, is a very close friend of mine. I spent 4 days with him about 10 years ago out in Kamai. I went out and talked to him. I will now begin to describe Open Eyes, and what happens in 5 steps. And I'm going to read excerpts from this bulletin of his that he wrote. It's Aid and Abet Bulletin, spring 2007. Jack starts out and says, government, 5 easy steps to creating a mind control assassin out of anyone. And he says, yes, even you. He said that the Columbine killings were the beginning of the final push to take all guns out of the hands of the American people. And Jack says he has the intelligence to back up the statement that the government was involved. 1 month to the day after Columbine, another similar shooting occurred in Georgia. Because of the methods and tactics used and other corroborating intelligence, it is believed by many in law enforcement that these killings are not random acts of teenage violence. It is believed that these school killings are a planned, methodical, psychological attack on the minds of the people and against the freedom which is enjoyed but taken for granted by citizens of the United States of America. The method of attack is designed to inflame anger and hysteria in the American public. The media whips up the anger and hysteria and keeps it fresh in Americans' mind with continual graphic, around-the-clock overkill coverage and commentary on the dead and wounded victims, the pain and suffering of the families, and the traumatic scars left on America's children. U.S. political leaders use the hysteria of the moment to blame guns for the problems of America's schools and America's children. In the heat of hysteria, Congress is pressured to pass more gun laws. The hysteria and anger towards guns or groups, propelled by the politicians and media, continues to sweep across America. No one in media or interviewed by the media is allowed to speak rashly on the subject of guns. Many of the mass murders in recent decades have committed suicide at the site of the killings, or they are killed by a law enforcement officer once the various government agencies arrive. It is also possible that the killers will have self-destructed by committing suicide. Dead men and boys tell no tales, and this has happened in several of the instances. We can go into it later if you want.
Okay.
When the child killer's dead, there's no way to trace back its original origin and mind-control programming, the true cause of the killing spree. If these people had been programmed using a Manchurian candidate type of mind control that has been around since the 1920s and actively used since the Korean War, a trained psychiatrist can find the mind control track. For the psychiatrist to do the job, he needs a live killer, and he needs the cooperation of local law enforcement officials. The only way to stop these shootings is make the public realize that the Manchurian candidates do exist, and the kids who are committing these tragic crimes could be victims of government mind control. Once the guns are out of the hands of the American public, another twist in random mayhem will begin. More programmed Manchurian candidates will begin anarchistic attacks on the public using bombs, knives, fires, Molotov cocktails, baseball bats, and any other item that can be used as a weapon. Then we go to this, and where do the government leaders get these children and adults to use? One of the places where an honest investigator can begin researching is with government child welfare, child protective services. Hundreds of children just disappear from these government homes each year, which the public is not allowed to know about. Now, I can say this. I don't know if you know that the late Ted Gunderson, FBI agent, did a lot of investigation into this years ago. He's now deceased.
Right.
Also, there are satanic and other kinds of cults, children's mental institutions, and government in-house drug rehab programs. After checking, we found that almost all children involved in the school killings had been mandated psychotropic drugs by some government agency or court, or who was under the control of a psychiatrist, many being government operatives, or in a government mental hospital. A few had attended satanic cult meetings. There have been many books written about CIA mind control programs, but no document or book has exposed the method used to create a programmed assassin. This article covers the basic program system used. Once you read this, you will understand how and why mass murders such as Columbine take place, or why suicide bombings occur. Now we'll get into the meat of Operation Open Eyes, the 5 steps, okay?
Right. Before you do, Bart, we were both wrong about Columbine. It was April 20th, 1999.
Oh, okay, okay. It's best to have the date right, absolutely. Now, Operation Open Eyes. A preset group of government or private agency people canvass places like state and county hospitals and immigration centers to find out viable candidates. And this also includes prisons, I understand, too. We locate and select people who many times have no close family or friends. Those already on government-administrated psychotropic drugs make for very good subjects or assets. Now, we will go into levels 1 and 2 first. Level 1. If the tested applicant has more than 120 IQ, a recall command and accompanying trigger word will be written into his personality during Level 1 hypnosis session. It only takes a short time to accomplish this recall trigger, about 1 hour. Then there's a bunch of tests, and it says if he passes these tests, he is then brought into Level 2 hypnosis, where specific instructions are written, placed through hypnotic commands and suggestions, and into his personality, and is given diverse secret small tasks and orders to carry out. If the subject, upon release, shows he has retained the instructions which were written into his personality, and if he carries out the small and unimportant tasks and work duties which were assigned under Level 2 hypnosis, he will receive another recall service notice. Now I'm going to go on now into Level 3, hypnosis, where the subject will receive an overwrite upon his own personality, an overwrite which is a new identity or personality. It's similar to having multiple personalities, except the original personality is repressed or hidden under overwrite and will not surface for a set period of time, which is determined by the programmer. In the case of a field operative, Level 3 hypnosis is how the operative is prepared for a covert mission which can require a temporary new identity. Unbeknownst to the operative, just enough information will be written for the operative's alias and story to be believed by everyone, including law enforcement officials. For the field operative who is being prepared for a deadly covert mission, a Level 3 overwrite can eliminate all fear and nervousness and allow him to function under the nose of his enemies or friends or associates. During Level 3 program sessions, the new subject is told anything his program asks him to do is okay, even though it may be horrendously deadly and dangerous against all laws of the land. At Level 3, the subject is also programmed to believe he must and can do everything his friends, handlers, and programmers ask him to do. Level 4. Once at the farm facility, we will put the subject into Level 4 hypnosis, a place where he no longer differentiates between right and wrong. The subject will be told he is a superhuman and all laws are written for other people. The subject's moral code, respect for law, and fear of dying is replaced with new superhuman feelings. This is the level that turns the subject into a TOEFL, public programmed sleeper, assassin, or mad bomber who can commit crimes as serious as mass murder and afterwards has no shame, guilt, remorse, or memory. The Level 4 superhuman overwrite replaces the subject's own morality and or religious ethics with a program that makes him believe he's beyond all human laws, just like many of our politicians.
Of course, that's true.
Yeah, the superhuman hypnosis overwrite eliminates both the superhuman overwrite and also gives the subject the feeling of immortality and invincibility. At Level 4, diverse programs can be written or overwritten into the brain. Any command is accepted at this level. At Level 4, you can give the test subject a completely new personality and history, although this is not always done. Once the Level 4 programming is complete, it is part of his programming. The subject will be a different person with no memory of his former life. He will not be an amnesiac. He will have memories, but only the memories that the government gives him. He or she could be relocated to a new state and town and given a new life. This is for deep cover, long-term sleeper agents who may be under for years waiting for that call. Now, the sleeper agent may get him to commit mass murder, as for example, set off a tactical nuclear bomb in his own neighborhood, or assassinate a prominent government official or a private figure, and then, of course, kill himself. We don't need witnesses to be interviewed by the police now, do we? Well, everything to complete construction of the new person will be provided. Items such as driver's license, car, bank accounts, passport, credit cards, or birth certificate will be created or supplied by the government and will be valid and legal. The super subject will be also provided with all the small things that ordinary people have in their lives, such as photos of his family. His family won't really exist, but he won't know. His family many times will be government agencies themselves, or he could be allowed to have his own family. He will have all the feelings of love, hurt, anger that normal family members feel for each other. The photos of family and friends will be deep cover agency personnel. If ever a mission goes sour and the news media starts looking for his family, the agency-created family will be produced for a news conference or interview. Agency personnel have been well coached and are well-trained actors and actresses. They will fill their roles perfectly, usually letting the subject know that the relative, the clear-eyed subject, has always had a deeply troubled and violent past. The media will present the clear eyes as a nutcase who went on a tragic and senseless murder rampage. If the government wishes, within a month, to control the media, the public will have forgotten the incident. Now, we go to level 5. The level with the trigger is to activate the program is inserted. At level 5, very carefully, a code word, sequence of numbers, or a voice imprint is etched into the subject's brain. This is commonly known and referred to as a trigger, which will activate the subject into action. At this time, the subject will also be implanted with a chip, a coded traffic device, so that his location will always be known. This chip, unknown to the sleeper, may be embedded with an explosion device to release a poison or small explosion which will permanently put down or kill the programmed sleeper. If, for any reason, it is decided his handlers this may be necessary. Because of this program, the subject will not be able to associate with a crime he has just committed. Such a program's subject is Sirhan Sirhan, the assassin of Robert Kennedy. To this day, Sirhan cannot recall anything about the shooting of Senator Kennedy. And if you look at Aurora, that guy, when the police found it, he was just sitting in a car and he said, "What am I doing here?" He didn't know, you know. Now, I want to go into PSYOPs, if I can, Dave, because PSYOPs is the way they go ahead and implement these programs. You've heard of PSYOPs,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Of course, psychological operations.
Yeah, and their motto is persuade, change, and inflow. And this is on page 3 and 5 of Jack's newsletter, and I'm going to give the number of the letter and everything again, and I have a reason for doing this later on. Jack goes on to say, one thing I want to explain, that there's often duties assigned to our agent teams, which some of us will not follow due to a certain amount of concern for our fellow Americans and patriotism towards our own nations. When this happens, our government leaders will hire any number of tens of thousands of private contractors who themselves many times are retired Special Forces soldiers. Today, as never before, though, our governments have a plethora of specialists called private contractors from more than 40 nations who hire themselves out at high cost to do the unspeakable act our government leaders wish to have committed, many times against our own citizens. 9/11 was one of those acts, as you know. Jack goes ahead to say in his bulletin, we, the Brit and the Israeli Mossad, are very best in the world in PSYOP warfare, which is simply misleading and misdirecting the focus of masses towards select evidence, subjects, and targets. And most regrettably, it is the Americans, Israelis, and Brits who are targeted masses of psychological manipulation by their own leaders today. America, Britain and Israel are bombed by their own secret agencies for political reasons to cause their citizens to move some direction through fear and panic. This pushes these people further into arms and under control of their tyrannical government leaders. As you know, fellow soldiers, Americans were subject to government bombings to get them behind the start of the wars in the Middle East. Britain carried out the government bombings of their public transportation system to cause the people to vote to stay in the internationalist wars for their land, power, and oil in the Middle East. So this is the way they do these things. Now, since this article was written in 2007, this was spring 2007, it was issue 42.1, aid and abet, there have been mass shootings. And Jack wrote this after Virginia Tech. There had been mass shootings after this at Binghamton, the Alma shootings, Fort Hood, Tucson, the Suki shootings, Aurora, Sandy Hook, and now Washington Navy Yard. Now, at Binghamton, I believe the guy who did this, he killed himself. The Alma's killing, he shot and killed himself. Fort Hood, that psychiatrist did not kill himself, but there's been some reports that he was at the National Institute of Health in the MK Ultra Center there, so very possible he was brainwashed there. You had Tucson, Alabama, where the Congressman Jeffords was shot. Now, you look at that guy in the pictures of him, and there's something wrong there. He might have been drugged or whatever. The Sioux shooting, I believe that the police killed that guy. At Aurora, that man, he doesn't remember what happened. And if you look at him on TV, he looked like he was absolutely drugged right from the beginning. Sandy Hook, supposedly he killed himself, and now Washington Navy Yard, they say the police killed him. So, to me, you have an absolute definite pattern to a T of these killings. As a result, you have draconian gun laws, but at the federal level, for the time being, this has been stopped. And recently, Colorado's recall election cost 2 anti-gun politicians their job, and maybe this is going to sweep across the nation. I hope it does. But I raise the question now, Dave, is it possible that our controlling powers, and you know who I mean, those people, the ruling elite who run this country from behind the scenes, were angered at the recalls and have orchestrated the Navy Yard shootings through open eyes and psyops to neutralize the recall movement? I don't know. This is just a speculation, but I would not put this past them at all. Years ago, Jack McLean told me when I was out there in Idaho, he said, you know, Bart, these people are killers. And he was right. Now, what I wonder is American Free Press going to do a thorough, honest investigation of these shootings down in Washington, D.C., because it's right in their backyard. And I feel that they really dropped the ball with Sandy Hook. And this was even done by an executive decision not to write about it, and people were told not to write about it and not bring it up. And I know this, and I've been very disappointed about this, because Jack McLean, who I know very well, has hit the nail right on the head as far as I'm concerned. There could have been an investigation on this. Yes, there's been a lot of disinformation put out about Sandy Hook, and this has been purposely to confuse people. And the one in the Navy Yard, it's come out now, they said that an AR-15 was used. Not so. Or AR-15 was not used. And, oh, there's a second gunman. They've said this before in other shootings, to create confusion. Jack McLean and I sent an article. It was joint done between Jack and myself by Victor Thorne. And they censored quite a bit of the article out of it and cut a lot of it out about open eyes and what Jack said. And I just wonder if they do an investigation. Are they going to do an investigation of the Washington, D.C. shooting? They ought to. It's right in their backyard. Are they going to censor it out, or are we going to really get the truth? I don't know. Now, I have suggested to the AFP editor, even with Sandy Hook, what they could do, or something, they could come along with future issues of AFP and do something like this, if this makes sense. See what you think. They come out and they have their legal headlines. You have something that would say Sandy Hook, or maybe make it Navy Yard, you know, big bold letters, and open eyes or psyops, and then write an article describing open eyes and psyops, and then file in succeeding issues shootings at Columbine, Virginia Tech, et cetera, so just exactly how these went down, and encourage people, readers, to contact pro-gun groups, their representatives, to ask for an investigation of open eyes and also for psyops. And like you have the National Rifle Association, they've got 4 million members, and get them on their delegates, and get NRA and Gun Owners America to go ahead and ask for an investigation, look into it. And I've written to the NRA, I'm not a member, I'm a member of Gun Owners of America, and asked them to investigate this. I haven't heard from them. Now, another thing could be done. Why not have a t-shirt that would say, remember Sandy Hook, or remember the Navy Yards, and expose open eyes and psyops? This is in people's minds right now. Even Sandy Hook. What's this open eyes? And then you tell them. I had an experience very recently. I had a shirt that I bought. You remember where Edgar Steele got railroaded? You remember that?
Yeah, I've interviewed him several times. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Now, they had those T-shirts, Free Edgar. I bought a couple of them. I had one on the other day, and this woman, she says, who is Edgar? And I told her, and I said, you know, this is what the government did. She said, well, you know, of course our government does a lot of things like that. I said, yes, ma'am, they do. She'd never heard about Edgar Steele. But people have heard about Sandy Hook. They have heard, of course, the Navy Yard shooting, because the news media is now blasting it all over the place. So why not do something like this? And I think AFP ought to get on the stick about something like this. And this is why I feel that something should be done, and I think that AFP has dropped the ball. I really do. I've been a subscriber for a number of years. I was with the Spotlight before it went down, too. So is there anything you'd like to ask me, Dave?
First of all, I appreciate you covering all that and reading that. I did familiarize myself with Operation Open Eyes a bit.
I have given out quite a few of these articles, but Jax, I got them from Carol Asher, and I can tell you this much, that they read it and they say, by golly, when these shootings happen, they say, yep, absolutely. Another thing, Dave, I know we had a sheriff's meeting. Mike Drew was down here in Wycomico County, but Mike is dead set against gun control, and I know Mike. I met him some years ago, a meeting in a hospital, and he had this big town hall meeting because he was against the Maryland gun bill, and 550 people came out. and he let people speak. And I did get up before 550 people and did short and sweet, told them about Operation Open Eyes. And I said, look it up on the internet. And I told them basically the mass killings, because you had other people who wanted to speak, and I didn't want to hog everything. So this is what's got to be done. People told me people were taking notes and were very interested in what I had to say about this. I think this has to be done. Can I give you Doc McLam's newsletter again?
Sure, please.
Issue 42.1, Spring 2007, Aid and Abet and Constitutional Issues for Lawmen and Soldiers, and the website is Police and Military Against the New World Order.org, and the phone number is 208-935-7852. The fax number is 208-935-7854. Now, if anybody wants to write there, you're going to write to 115 Patrick Henry Court, Tamiami, Idaho, 83536. You can order these copies on tour. Carol can get them for you. It might be a little while, but Carol Asher is Jack's assistant. Now, Jack is in poor health now, so she's more or less running the show, but she's a very, 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 very fine Christian woman, and very pro-gun and pro-American, and just a very wonderful person, and she will be glad to help anybody. Now, there's one thing else that I can say, too. You know, if you look at scriptures, do you know what the Bible says about gun control?
No, I don't.
Luke 22:36, and it basically says, if you don't have a sword, sell thy garment and buy one. Christ said that to his disciples. So there it is right there.
Couldn't come from a higher source, right?
Exactly. Oh, if anybody wants to contact me, they can do it by phone, 410-784-2350. And also, I can give them my mail address if they want that. P.O. Box 183, Deal, D-E-A-L, Island, Maryland, 21821.
Bart Van Ness, I want to thank you so much for the time you spent explaining all this to the listeners. Thank you for supporting Spotlight and American Free Press all these decades. We need more Americans like you and people all across the globe to support American Free Press, because it is really America's last real newspaper. This might be the last alternative national newspaper out there, so I want to thank you, Bart, for doing that, and thank you for raising the questions and being critical of American Free Press, because that's important that we're all critical of each other, because we constantly challenge each other. And perhaps, American Free Press will hear this and they will adjust their reporting because of your recommendations. So thank you, Bart. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks a lot, Dave. I really appreciate everything you've done, and really, thank you for everything.